Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at excerpts from Time Travelers and Christ, which is a fictional dialogue between time travelers and Jesus.
Time travelers and Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty unique approach to tackling these big questions about identity and truth and belief.
Yeah.
So imagine this. Time travelers in the future encounter someone who claims to be Christ, but they think this person is delusional. They think he's totally off his rocker
Oh, wow.
because they've met the OG.
They've already met Jesus.
They've met Jesus.
Yeah.
So
That's fascinating.
that's fascinating.
It is, because you immediately kind of wonder, like, who has the ultimate authority then in this case? You know, if we're talking about matters of faith,
Yeah.
the time travelers seem to think that it rests with Jesus.
Right. They journey back in time.
Yeah.
And they're seeking Jesus's validation. Like, hey, Jesus, can you just debunk this guy
Right.
for us, please?
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This future Christ figure claims to have unique knowledge.
Okay.
And he's asserting that his truth is directly connected to God's truth. He says to them
Yeah.
for him to be wrong, you have to be wrong.
Ooh, that's a powerful statement.
Right.
It really kind of highlights the complexity of this whole situation.
Yes.
And it makes the time travelers and us as readers think, well, maybe our understanding of Christ is limited.
Exactly. And then there's this whole concept of a key
A key.
that Jesus possesses.
Okay.
And the time travelers describe this future Christ figure as someone who opens what no one can close and closes what no one can open.
Oh, wow.
And they're saying this comes from a truth given by God.
Okay.
And they're saying that this guy, this future Christ figure, also has that same truth, which
Yeah.
allows him to perform miracles.
I see. So this key represents something deeper than
Yeah.
maybe a pre-existing kind of principle
Right.
that allows for the miracles to occur.
It's like the truth that underpins it all.
It's not just about the spectacle,
Right.
but it's about what's allowing this to happen in the first place.
The source of the power.
Yeah, and the source even hints that this key is intimately connected with the very nature of Christ.
Right.
You know, the time travelers describe the future Christ using language that echoes descriptions of Jesus. His truth is a gift from God, and he can, open what no one can close and close what no one can open.
And this is where the idea of true seeing comes into play.
True seeing.
Right? Because this future Christ figure claims to be more convincing than Jesus.
Okay.
And so it makes you think,
Yeah.
what is true seeing in this context?
Right. It's one of the central questions this is forcing us to ask as readers.
Yeah.
Is it about recognizing that key
Yeah.
and that divine truth that seems to underpin Christ's power?
And it really pushes us to think beyond the surface and what's going on.
Absolutely.
And what are the kind of deeper theological implications of this whole thing?
For sure. And let's not forget the time travelers.
All right.
They are completely bewildered by all of this.
Right.
They can't reconcile his claims with their own understanding of Jesus.
Yeah.
They actually even question if he's sane or not.
It
Ironic.
is kind of ironic.
They're going back in time
Right. Yeah.
to get validation from Jesus.
Yeah.
And yet they're resistant to accepting that this other person
Right.
could be a manifestation of Christ.
Yeah. Their own certainty kind of blinds them from other possibilities.
Yeah. And it really speaks to, I think, how we
Yeah.
view things sometimes.
Yeah. It highlights the limitations of our own perspectives sometimes.
Oh.
We tend to cling to what we think we know,
Yeah.
even when presented with evidence that might challenge that.
Exactly.
The time travelers are so fixated on how they understand Christ
Right.
and how he should appear that they don't grasp this different way of seeing Christ.
And this is precisely why Jesus' response to them, I think, is so thought-provoking.
Because he doesn't just dismiss the future figure.
He just shut it down.
Right. He kind of engages them in this deeper discussion.
Oh, interesting.
And he guides them to kind of look at their own beliefs and assumptions.
Like he's facilitating almost.
Yeah. And he uses this style that's very reminiscent of Socratic dialogue.
Okay.
And he's asking these pointed questions that force them to confront their own inconsistencies.
Yeah, and that's what makes the source so interesting, is that it doesn't give us an easy answer.
Right.
It just provides this thought-provoking scenario that makes us think about these complex questions
Exactly.
about identity and belief and the nature of truth.
It's inviting us to question our assumptions
It is.
and consider different perspectives.
Even within the realm of faith.
Yeah, this deep dive is getting deep.
Oh, yeah.
We got time travel and competing claims to be Christ and this mysterious key and what it means to truly see Christ.
That's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot, but
Yeah.
it's super fascinating.
We're just getting started.
I know, we're just getting started.
We still have to explore Jesus' response in more detail and analyze how he uses that Socratic dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go deeper into this key and the concept of true seeing.
Stay tuned, because we're about to uncover so much more meaning in this text.
Yeah. It's so interesting how Jesus responds to all of this.
Right.
He doesn't just tell the time travelers what to believe.
Right.
He actually guides them through a process,
He does.
encouraging them and questioning them to examine their own assumptions.
He really does act like a facilitator,
He does.
helping them uncover these inconsistencies in their own thinking.
Yeah, like when he says, you believe the sign given and reject the power that gave it.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's highlighting that they're so focused on
Right.
the superficial aspects of faith
yeah.
that they're missing the underlying truth.
Exactly. Like they're accepting that he possesses this key as like evidence of his authority, but they're failing to grasp the significance of that key.
It's like they're looking at a map but missing the territory.
Right. They're missing the big picture.
Yeah.
Because they're so caught up in the specifics. And
Yeah.
this is where that concept of true seeing comes in.
Right.
It's not just about witnessing miracles or
Right.
accepting something at face value, but it's about understanding the deeper principle at play,
Right.
the deeper truth.
So true seeing in this context is a deeper understanding of what's going on.
A deeper understanding, absolutely.
Okay.
And the source suggests that true seeing is connected to this key that Jesus possesses.
Right. So it's not just about,
Right.
performing the miracles, but understanding the source of them.
The divine truth behind it.
Yeah. And that brings us back to that statement from the future Christ figure,
What was that again?
where he says, for him to be wrong, you have to be wrong.
Oh, right, right.
It's like he's suggesting that they need to shift their perspective.
Yeah, it's challenging them.
Yeah.
To consider that their understanding of Christ might be incomplete.
And this ties back into the key is this deeper truth.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental principle that transcends the specific events happening.
Yeah, and this is where I think it gets even more interesting,
Oh, really?
because the source is hinting that the key isn't just a metaphor,
Okay.
but it's connected to Christ's
Oh, wow.
very essence.
So it's linked to his very being.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And the time travelers are even describing this future Christ figure using language that reminds me of how we talk about Jesus.
Oh,
It's like they talk about how his power is coming from a truth bestowed by God.
So the key isn't just like a tool then.
Right. It's like
It's something more.
it's part of who he is.
Yeah, and this could be related to the Logos.
The logos.
Yeah, the concept of the divine word or reason that we see in Christ.
Right.
This is a very deep concept in Christianity.
Yeah.
And it seems like this source is playing with that idea.
Yeah. So we're not just talking about time travel and someone claiming to be Christ.
We're getting into these deeper theological concepts
We are.
about the nature of Christ and divine truth and the Logos.
And let's not forget the source mentions that Jesus possessed this key
Yeah.
before his death and resurrection.
Oh, that's a good point.
So the key, this deeper truth, is what enables him to overcome death.
So it's not that he was resurrected,
Right.
and that's why he appeared to people.
Right. The key is enabling him to transcend death.
Wow, that's really thought-provoking.
It really is. And it challenges how we typically understand the resurrection.
It does.
Like the resurrection isn't the defining event
Yeah.
in this case. It's
Yeah.
like it comes from this key.
Right. So the key in this context
Yeah.
is the source of his power.
That's what it seems like.
And the miracles are just a manifestation of that.
Exactly. And the resurrection would be included in that.
Right.
It's a very subtle but very profound shift in perspective.
So if we're taking this idea seriously,
Yeah.
that this truth allows Christ to conquer death,
Yeah.
what does that mean for us?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, like what is the key in our own lives?
What's that deeper truth for us?
Yeah, could it be about discovering our own purpose or maybe overcoming those challenges in our lives?
Yeah, those limitations that we put on ourselves.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of the time travelers here.
Yeah, what about them?
They were so focused on who they thought Christ should be
Right.
that they couldn't accept the possibility of this other person.
They were stuck in their own understanding,
Yeah.
and it kind of blinded them.
to a different way of seeing Christ.
It's a trap we all fall into sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
You know, we think we know how things are,
Yeah.
and we resist anything that challenges that.
Yeah.
But we have to be willing to embrace the unknown.
To step outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah, and to consider these new possibilities.
So it's like this source is saying there might be more to the story
Absolutely.
than what we initially think.
There's always more to learn.
Right.
And the story highlights the importance of open-mindedness.
Yeah. Being open to different perspectives.
Even if those perspectives challenge what we think.
Exactly.
I love how this source doesn't give us a straight answer.
I do too.
It doesn't try to force a certain interpretation.
Right. It lets the reader
It really does.
come to their own conclusion.
It allows us to explore these questions and come to our own understanding.
Right. And I think that's much more powerful
Oh, for sure.
than just giving one answer.
Absolutely.
So as we're kind of getting to the end of this deep dive into time travelers in Christ,
Yeah.
what are some of the main things we should be taking away from this?
Well, I think this source is encouraging us to question how we think about identity and authority and even truth.
Yeah. It challenges us to look deeper
It does.
than the superficial things.
Beyond the surface.
And it also highlights the importance of being open-minded,
Yes, being open to different perspectives.
even when those challenge what we think.
And I think most importantly,
Yeah.
it challenges us to think about what that key might represent.
In our own lives.
In our own lives, like what are those deeper truths or those guiding principles that help us navigate life?
Yeah, what helps us unlock our full potential?
Absolutely. That's something we should all be thinking about.
You know, it's amazing to me how this fictional dialogue is really sparking some deep thoughts about faith and understanding.
Yeah.
And we talked about this key as this symbol for deeper truths.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking about those time travelers.
Yeah.
They were so convinced that this future guy couldn't be Christ.
Well, yeah, they were coming from a place where they had already met Jesus.
Right.
They had already met him in the past.
Yet it really felt like they were letting their own definition of Christ get in the way
Right.
of truly seeing him.
Their certainty was like an obstacle.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if we do the same thing sometimes.
Oh, I think we all do.
Not just with faith, but with everything.
Absolutely.
We have our beliefs, so we filter everything through that lens.
Right.
It makes it hard to accept new ideas.
It really does. And this source makes us wonder, what if they had been more open-minded?
Right.
What if they had just listened to this guy?
What if they had tried to understand?
Maybe they would have seen Christ in a different way.
Yeah, it's like they were looking for the same Jesus,
Yeah.
but in a different package.
Instead of accepting a different expression of the same thing.
Yeah, and this, I think, is like the biggest challenge in this whole source.
What's that?
It's a challenge for us to be open-minded,
Yeah.
to actually listen to new ideas, even when we think they're radical.
To step outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah, and it's hard
It is.
because we're so comfortable with what we think we know.
But that's what makes this source so great.
I agree.
It doesn't give us the answer.
It doesn't tell us what to think
It just gives us these ideas to think about.
and lets us figure it out.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive
Okay.
into time travelers and Christ,
Yeah.
what are some of the big things our listeners should be thinking about?
Well, I think this source really wants us to question how we think about identity and authority and truth.
Yeah.
And it wants us to really try to understand things.
Go beyond the surface,
Yeah, and to be open to different ideas.
even when they're difficult.
Yeah, even when they challenge us.
And for me,
Yeah.
the most important thing is this key.
What about it?
Like, what does that symbolize for us?
In our own lives.
Yeah, what are our deeper truths that can help us live better lives?
That's a great question and something we should all be thinking about.
So to all our listeners out there, keep thinking about these ideas and explore these questions for yourselves.
Yeah,
You might just find your own key.
absolutely.
And until next time, keep diving deep.